The screen is black for a moment, then fades in on a woman in her late 20s, sitting in a simply decorated, but warm, apartment. She looks directly at the camera, her expression calm, but carrying a universe of weight. My brother stole my grandmother's soul and sold it on a morning talk show. 3 days later, a cease and desist letter from a top-tier intellectual property law firm landed on his agent's desk. Everyone called me the villain. They said I destroyed our family over a book. They're wrong. I destroyed a lie to save myself. For one dizzying, nauseating minute, I watched my life's work, my heart, my tribute, my entire being, unfold on national television with my brother's face attached to it. The show was called Sunrise Kitchen, one of those aggressively cheerful morning programs with bright yellow couches and hosts who speak in exclamation points. And there was Liam, my older brother, the golden boy, basking in the studio lights. He was wearing an apron I'd never seen before, leaning against a rustic kitchen set that was a sterile, soulless imitation of our grandmother's home. The host, a woman named Brenda, with teeth so white they looked like a special effect, held up the book. "So, Liam," she beamed, "this is just stunning. Nonna's Table, a grandson's culinary inheritance. The story behind this is just, it gives me chills. Tell our audience how you single-handedly saved these 100-year-old family recipes." My vision tunneled. The coffee cup in my hand started to shake. A grandson's culinary inheritance. My blood ran cold. I saw the cover clearly. It was a professionally shot photo of Liam, laughing, dusting flour from his hands. My hands. The hands that were covered in flour for 5 straight years. Behind him, slightly out of focus, was a photograph of our Nonna Elena, my Nonna, the book I had poured my entire existence into, the project I had named Nonna's Table. Liam leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth as butter, a practiced, humble charm washing over the audience. "Well, Brenda, it was a labor of love," he said, and I felt the air leave my lungs. "My Nonna Elena, she was the heart of our family, and when she passed, I was terrified her legacy would disappear. These recipes, they weren't just food. They were stories. I spent years in the family archives, translating her old handwritten notes, testing every single dish until it was perfect. I just felt this overwhelming duty to preserve her memory for the world." The studio audience awed on cue. Brenda clutched her heart. I felt like I was going to be sick. The family archives? He meant the dusty trunk in the attic that I had spent 6 months cataloging, wearing a mask to protect myself from the mildew. The handwritten notes? He meant the fragile, food-stained pages I had painstakingly scanned, translated from a nearly extinct Italian dialect, and cross-referenced with old family letters. The testing? That was the 3 years I spent in my own tiny kitchen, burning through my savings on ingredients, crying over failed batches of gnocchi at 2 a.m., and finally, getting the cassata cake to taste exactly like the one Nonna made for my 10th birthday. I was Maya, the quiet archivist, the family historian, the one who actually sat at Nonna's feet, absorbing her stories while Liam was out being the captain of the football team. He couldn't even cook pasta without setting off a smoke alarm. My entire world, my entire identity, was being narrated by a fraud. And the worst part? As I watched him smile that million-dollar smile, I knew with a bone-deep certainty that my parents were at home, watching the same show, tears of pride in their eyes. For him, never for me. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my remote at the screen. I just sat there, in the silence of my apartment, and a switch inside me flipped. Not off, but on. It was a cold, quiet, and terrifyingly clear awakening. The time for being the understanding, supportive little sister was over. He hadn't just stolen a book. He'd plagiarized my life, and I was about to issue a correction. To understand why I didn't just call him and scream, you have to understand the ecosystem of my family. We didn't operate on love and support. We operated on the worship of Liam. He was the sun, and the rest of us were just insignificant planets caught in his orbit, expected to reflect his light. He was a visionary, an entrepreneur, a disruptor. Those were the words my father used. Most of his ventures were flashy, short-lived startups funded by my parents that fizzled out within a year. But the narrative never changed. Liam was destined for greatness. I, on the other hand, was steady, reliable, quiet. In our family, those were polite words for unimportant. My project, the cookbook, was born from grief. When Nonna Elena passed away 5 years ago, it felt like the family's anchor had been cut. She was our history. I was working as a research assistant at a university library, and I found solace in the tangible. I asked my mom if I could go through Nonna's old things, specifically the trunk of letters and recipe cards she kept in the attic. "Oh, that old thing," my mom said. "Sure, sweetie. Just be careful of the dust. Liam's allergies, you know." Even in her absence, his comfort came first. For the next 5 years, that trunk became my sanctuary. It was more than a hobby. It was a resurrection. Each recipe card was a ghost. Nonna's handwriting, loopy and elegant in some places, spidery and rushed in others. Faded ink on brittle paper that smelled of vanilla and thyme. I used my archivist skills to preserve them, scanning each one in high resolution. I bought books on regional Italian dialects to translate phrases she'd scribbled in the margins. It was a detective story, a history project, and a love letter, all in one. I didn't just want to collect recipes. I wanted to tell the story of the woman behind them. I interviewed older relatives, cross-referencing their memories with dates on the letters. I discovered that her famous almond biscotti recipe was something she created during the war when sugar was scarce, using honey from a neighbor's hive. Her 7-fish stew wasn't just for Christmas Eve. It was a tribute to her father, a fisherman who was lost at sea. Each dish had a soul. I was its curator. Throughout this whole process, Liam would occasionally breeze into town. "Still playing with those old papers, Maya?" he'd ask, ruffling my hair like I was a child. "You should digitize that stuff. Create an app. Nonna Go. We could monetize it." He didn't see the history. He saw a business opportunity he couldn't be bothered to execute himself. My parents saw it as a cute, quaint pastime. "It's so nice you have a little hobby to keep you busy," my mother would say, her tone laced with a faint pity. They were pouring tens of thousands of dollars into Liam's latest doomed venture, a subscription box for artisanal dog toys, while I was funding my historical research with my meager salary. The real betrayal began subtly. About a year ago, I finished the manuscript. Over 300 pages of recipes, stories, and high-resolution photos I had taken myself. It was my masterpiece. I was proud, terrified, and excited. I told my parents I was going to start querying literary agents. My dad looked skeptical. An agent? Isn't that a bit ambitious, sweetie? It's a very competitive market. That's when Liam, ever the opportunist, chimed in on a family video call. Hey, that's great, sis. But you know how these publishing people are. They're sharks. You don't have the connections. Why don't you send the manuscript to me? I have a guy who knows a guy. I can get it in the right hands. Make sure you don't get taken advantage of. It felt off. But my parents immediately seized on it. Oh, what a wonderful idea, my mom gushed. Liam can help you. He's so good at this sort of thing. He can package it for you. The implication was clear. I was incapable. I was the fragile artist. He was the savvy businessman who would shepherd my little project into the real world. I hesitated. I don't know, Liam. It's very personal. Very exactly, he said, his voice oozing sincerity. And I'll protect it. I'll make sure they see the vision. Just send me the file. The whole thing. I'll look it over. Maybe polish up the proposal and float it to my contacts. I'll be your champion. Like an idiot, I caved. I was worn down by their lack of faith in me, and a tiny, pathetic part of me hoped that if he helped, they would finally see my work as valid. I emailed him the final, fully edited, beautifully formatted manuscript. The file was named Nonna's Table Final Maya Author, DocX. I even included a folder of all my high-resolution food photography. His reply was a single line. Got it, I'm on it. You're gonna be a star. The silence that followed should have been a deafening alarm, but I was conditioned to trust him, to believe that his success would somehow trickle down to me. I spent the next 6 months waiting, occasionally asking for updates, only to be told he was in talks, and that these things take time. I had no idea he was taking my soul and shopping it around with his own name on the cover. The morning of the TV show, after the initial shockwave passed, something inside me solidified. The years of simmering resentment, of being sidelined, of being the family's quiet, functional furniture, hardened into diamonds. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury I couldn't afford. Crying was for victims, and I refused to be a victim anymore. I was a plaintiff. My first call wasn't to my family. It was to Dr. Alistair Finch, one of my old university professors, a man who had forgotten more about historical preservation and intellectual property than most people ever learn. He was retired, but we'd kept in touch. I explained the situation, my voice unnervingly steady. He was silent for a long moment, and then he said, Maya, this isn't just plagiarism. This is theft of a different order. This is your heritage. You need a shark. Let me make a call. An hour later, I was on the phone with a woman named Jessica Thorne from a high-powered law firm in the city. Her voice was calm, precise, and utterly devoid of pity. It was exactly what I needed. Send me everything, she said. Every email, every text message, every draft. The original scanned recipe cards. Any photos of you working on the project? The metadata from your original document files will be our smoking gun. I became a machine. I spent the next 48 hours compiling my life's work into a digital fortress of evidence. I had the email where I sent Liam the final manuscript, time-stamped. I had text messages from him over the past year, deflecting my questions about progress. "Making big moves, sis. Trust the process," one read. I had the original digital files of Nonna's recipes, scanned in 2018, long before Liam ever feigned interest. I had hundreds of photos of my kitchen, covered in flour, pot simmering, my hands kneading dough, with timestamps proving they were taken over a period of years. I had early drafts of the stories, filled with my own annotations and edits. The most damning piece of evidence was the file's metadata. My name as the author, the creation date, the long history of edits and saves, all logged on my personal computer. Liam had been sloppy. He'd copied and pasted my text into a new document, but he couldn't erase the digital breadcrumbs of its origin. While I worked, the family's reactions started to trickle in. My mom called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Maya, did you see him? Your brother, on Sunrise Kitchen. Isn't it just incredible? He even gave Nonna a shout-out. The book is already #1 on Amazon's new releases. We are so proud." I took a slow breath. "Mom," I said, my voice flat. "That was my book." There was a pause. "Oh, sweetie, don't be like that," she said, her tone shifting from pride to annoyance. "He gave you a dedication. We saw it. To my family for keeping the memories alive. That includes you. He's opening doors for all of us. You should be thanking him." That was the moment I understood. They weren't just ignorant. They were complicit. In their minds, I didn't exist as a creator. I was merely a resource, a stepping stone for their golden son. My work only had value once he put his name on it. I didn't argue. I just said, "I have to go, Mom," and hung up. The final piece of my arsenal was a photo I had of me and Nonna, taken a few months before she passed. We were in her kitchen, our hands covered in flour, rolling out pasta dough together. I was looking at her with pure adoration, and she was smiling, her eyes crinkling at the corners. I had planned to use it for the author photo. On the back of the print in her shaky hand, she had written, "To my Maya, who holds my heart and my kitchen. Love, Nonna." Liam had never seen it. He didn't even know it existed. I scanned it, front and back, and attached it to the email to Jessica Thorne, with the subject line, "Exhibit A." 3 days after the television appearance, Jessica sent the cease and desist letter. It was a work of art, a surgical strike. It went to the publisher, to Liam's newly acquired agent, and to the production company of the talk show. It detailed the overwhelming evidence of my authorship, the fraudulent claims made on their program, and the immediate demand to halt all publication, distribution, and promotion of Nonna's Table. It also mentioned potential damages for copyright infringement, misappropriation of likeness, Nonna's photo, and defamation. It was a declaration of war, and I had never felt more at peace. The first time Liam truly stole from me, I was 12, and he was 16. I had spent an entire summer saving up my allowance and babysitting money, a grand total of $200, to buy a telescope. I was obsessed with astronomy. I had charts of the constellations taped to my bedroom ceiling. That telescope was my prized possession. Liam, whose latest obsession was impressing a girl named Tiffany, thought it would be a cool prop for a romantic rooftop date. He didn't ask. He just took it. When I found out, I was furious. I confronted him and he just laughed. "Relax, Maya. It's just a toy." but he hadn't just used it. He and Tiffany had knocked it over, cracking the main lens and denting the body. It was useless. When I went to our parents, my voice shaking with a 12-year-old's profound sense of injustice, my father sighed. "Liam, you should have asked," he said with the force of a wet noodle. Then he turned to me. "Maya, you need to learn to share. It was an accident. Your brother didn't mean to break it. Liam didn't have to pay for it. He didn't even have to apologize. I was told I was overly emotional and making a big deal out of nothing. My dad gave me $40 to put towards a new one, as if that fixed the violation. The lesson was clear. My property wasn't mine if Liam wanted it. My feelings weren't valid if they inconvenienced him. This pattern repeated itself through our lives in 1,000 different ways. In high school, I wrote a deeply personal poem for a state competition. It was about Nonna's immigration story. I won a regional prize. A month later, Liam needed to write an essay for a prestigious scholarship application. The topic was overcoming adversity. He borrowed the core narrative of my poem, twisting Nonna's struggle into a story about how witnessing her resilience taught him perseverance. He won the scholarship. When I found out and dared to be upset, my mom told me, "You should be proud he was inspired by you. His success is the family's success." When I went to college, I chose a state school and worked 2 jobs to graduate debt-free. It was my practical and responsible choice. Liam went to a private, out-of-state university, racking up 6 figures of debt that my parents co-signed and eventually paid off. His degree was in communications and leadership, which seemed to primarily involve leading their bank account into the red. His failed startups were never called failures. They were learning experiences. My stable career as an archivist was seen as a lack of ambition. The most painful memory, the one that festered for years, was about Nonna's locket. It was a simple silver oval she always wore. Inside was a tiny faded photo of her parents. Before she died, she pressed it into my hand. "For you, my little historian," she'd whispered. "You keep the stories." It was my most sacred treasure. I wore it for her funeral. A week later, it was gone from my jewelry box. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that Liam had taken it. He had a new girlfriend who was really into vintage stuff. I confronted him, my voice dangerously quiet. "Where is it, Liam?" He had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. "I was going to give it back," he said. "She just wanted to wear it for a party." He had given away the last thing my grandmother had ever given me, a piece of her. I demanded he get it back. He called the girlfriend, who apparently had already lost it. It was just gone. When I told my parents, my mother actually had the audacity to say, "Maya, it's just a thing. You have your memories of Nonna. Liam made a mistake, but he feels terrible. Don't torture him over it." Torture him? I was the one whose heart was shattered, whose final link to our grandmother was gone, and I was torturing him by holding him accountable. That was the moment I emotionally checked out. I built a wall around my heart, brick by painful brick. The cookbook was my one vulnerability. It was the one piece of myself, the one piece of Nonna, that I thought was safe. I poured everything I had behind that wall into that project. And when he breached that wall, took that last sacred thing and plastered his face on it. He didn't just break a locket. He broke the dam. And he had no idea what kind of flood was coming for him. The explosion happened exactly 72 hours after the cease and desist letters were delivered. My phone began to vibrate on my kitchen counter and didn't stop for the better part of a day. It started with Liam. The first call I ignored. The second, third, and fourth. 2. Then came the barrage of texts. Maya, what the hell is this? Call me now. My agent just called me screaming. They're pulling the book. Are you insane? You're destroying my career. This was my big break. After everything I did for you, I was helping you. I read them. Each one a small confirmation that I had finally done something he couldn't ignore. Then came the call from my father. I knew I had to answer this one. I braced myself. Maya, he said, and his voice was colder than I had ever heard it. There was no sweetie, no honey, just my name, spoken like a curse. You will call this lawyer of yours, and you will tell her to stand down. Immediately. No, I said. It was the calmest I'd ever felt. There was a sputtering on the other end. No? What do you mean, no? Your brother is being accused of fraud. The publisher is threatening to sue him for misrepresentation. You have created a catastrophic mess over your little hobby. It was not a hobby, I said, my voice level. It was 5 years of my life, my work, my research. It was my book. And Liam stole it. He was elevating it, my father yelled, his voice cracking with fury. He has the platform, the charisma, to get it seen. He would have cut you in. You would have gotten your little credit, but you couldn't stand to see him succeed, could you? This has always been your problem, Maya. Jealousy. Jealousy? The word was so absurd, so fundamentally wrong, that I almost laughed. I'm not jealous of a thief, Dad. I'm not jealous of someone who has to steal a dead woman's legacy because he has none of his own. The line went silent for a beat. Then my mother came on the phone, snatching it from him. Her voice was a high-pitched wail of pure manipulation. Maya, how could you do this to your brother? To this family? He is devastated. He locked himself in his room. He told us he was just trying to make you proud. If he wanted to make me proud, he should have respected my work instead of stealing it, I replied, feeling like a stranger in my own skin, a woman I'd never met before but desperately wanted to be. He didn't just put his name on it. He went on national television and lied. He erased me. He erased Nonna's real story. That's not help. That's desecration. Desecration? Oh, you are so dramatic, she shrieked. It's a book. It's just a bunch of recipes. You are tearing this family apart over macaroni and meatballs. That's when I snapped. It wasn't about the macaroni. The shout ripped out of me, raw and ragged. It was about the telescope he broke, the poem he stole, the scholarship he lied to get, the locket he lost. It was about every single time you looked the other way because it was easier than holding him accountable. It was about 5 years of my life that you called a little hobby until he slapped his face on it. And suddenly, it was a masterpiece. This isn't about a book. This is about my entire life. And I'm done letting you all gaslight me into thinking I'm the crazy one. I was breathing heavily, my knuckles white where I gripped my phone. The other end was dead silent. I think I had finally, after 28 years, said something they couldn't twist. You have 2 choices, I said, my voice dropping back to that icy calm. You can stand by the son who lied and stole, Or you can for once in your life stand up for the daughter who told the truth. But either way, the letter stands. The lawsuit is moving forward. Liam will not publish my book. I hung up before they could reply. I slid down my kitchen cabinets and sat on the cold linoleum floor, the phone still clutched in my hand. I wasn't crying. I was hollowed out. I had finally detonated the bomb I'd been building inside me for decades. And in the ringing silence, all I could think was, now what? The aftermath was a slow, creeping fallout, like radioactive dust settling over our entire family landscape. The publisher facing a public relations nightmare and a lawsuit they couldn't possibly win, immediately dropped Liam and the book. They issued a terse public statement about postponing the release due to questions of authorship, which in corporate speak is a death sentence. The morning show that had hosted him had to air an awkward, legally vetted retraction, a 15-second blip about new information coming to light. Liam's burgeoning career as a celebrity author was over before it began. He went from visionary to pariah in the space of a week. He didn't take it well. He retreated into a fortress of victimhood with my parents as his loyal guards. The narrative they spun to the rest of the family was a masterpiece of revisionist history. In their version, I was a bitter, unstable shrew. I had tricked Liam into helping me, then pulled the rug out from under him at the last minute for a bigger piece of the pie. They claimed I was mentally unwell, lashing out because of professional jealousy. The calls from extended family started. My Aunt Carol, who sends a generic Christmas card every year, left a voicemail dripping with condescending pity. Maya, honey, I heard you're going through something. Please don't let this bitterness consume you. Your brother loves you. My Uncle Mark, a man who believes every problem can be solved with a firm handshake, texted me. Family is everything. Don't throw it away. They weren't trying to understand. They were trying to manage me, to push me back into my designated box. I didn't reply to any of them. I forwarded the most egregious messages to my lawyer with the simple note. For the file. The one person who reached out in support was my cousin Sofia. She was Nonna Elena's sister's granddaughter, and she had the same fire in her eyes. Her text was short and fierce. Nonna would be so proud of you. Don't you dare back down. It was a life raft in an ocean of guilt trips. The real consequences, however, were quieter and more profound. I had lost my family. The illusion that we could ever be a normal, healthy unit was shattered. Every conversation was now a potential legal liability. My parents stopped calling. The silence was both a relief and an ache. It's a strange thing to mourn people who are still alive, to grieve a relationship that was mostly poison, but was, for better or worse, all you ever knew. One evening, about a month into the legal battle, there was a knock on my door. It was Liam. He looked awful. He'd lost weight, his eyes were bloodshot, and his usual charismatic glow was gone, replaced by a dull, desperate sheen. He didn't try to push his way in. He just stood in the hallway, looking defeated. "Can we just talk?" he asked. His voice was raspy. I kept the chain on the door. "There's nothing to talk about, Liam. You can speak to my lawyer." "No, please," he said. And for the first time, I heard something that wasn't performance. It sounded like genuine fear. "Maya, they're going to make me pay back the advance. It's $100,000. I don't have it. I spent it. Of course he had. The publisher is talking about suing me for damages. My agent dropped me. My name is mud. You've ruined me. I stared at him. I waited for the familiar pang of guilt, the conditioned instinct to fix his problems, to make it all better. It never came. All I felt was a vast cold emptiness. I didn't ruin you, Liam, I said, my voice as flat as a frozen lake. You did this. You took the advance for a book you didn't write. You took the credit for work you didn't do. You lied on television to millions of people. These aren't my consequences. They are yours. For the first time in your life, they are finally, unequivocally yours. His face crumpled. The last vestige of his bravado broke, and he started to cry. Not the crocodile tears he'd used for our parents, but ugly, hiccuping sobs of a man who has hit bedrock. I'm sorry, he choked out. Okay? I'm sorry. I never thought. I just wanted to be successful. I wanted them to be proud of me. So did I whispered, more to myself than to him. I looked at this broken man, my brother, and I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I just felt an immense, soul-crushing sadness for the both of us. For the family we never had. For the years we'd lost to this toxic dynamic. I can't help you, Liam, I said. Then I quietly closed the door, slid the deadbolt, and leaned my forehead against the cool wood, listening to his sobs fade away down the hall. The war was over, and it felt like nobody had won. In the months that followed, the silence from my family was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket. I knew the legal proceedings were ongoing, mostly through updates from Jessica. Liam, faced with the mountain of evidence and no financial means to fight it, had been forced into a settlement. He had to publicly acknowledge my authorship, sign over all rights to the material, and work out a payment plan with the publisher to return the advance. It was a complete and total legal victory for me. It felt hollow. I had my book back, but the joy was gone. The project that had once been my sanctuary was now tainted, a monument to my family's dysfunction. The thought of opening the manuscript file made my stomach clench. It was like visiting a beautiful home that had been burglarized. It was still yours, but the violation lingered in the air. I tried to move on. I threw myself into my work at the library, finding comfort in the quiet order of the archives, in stories that belonged to everyone and no one. I started seeing a therapist, someone to help me unpack the decades of emotional baggage I'd been carrying. She called my role in the family the designated caretaker, the one expected to absorb all the dysfunction without complaint. Naming it helped. About 6 months after I'd last seen Liam, I received a package in the mail. It was a small padded envelope with my father's handwriting on it. No return address. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was Nonna's silver locket. It was scratched and a little tarnished, but it was there. Tucked in with it was a note, written on a torn piece of paper in my mother's cursive. It didn't say, "We're sorry." It didn't say, "We were wrong." It just said, "Liam found it at a pawn shop. We thought you should have it." It was their olive branch, but it was a poisoned one. It was a gesture of peace without an apology, a transaction meant to absolve them of guilt without the messy work of actual reconciliation. They weren't admitting fault. They were returning stolen goods and hoping it would be enough. I held the cool metal in my palm, the weight of it both a comfort and a burden. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I cried. I cried for the 12-year-old girl who lost her telescope. I cried for the young woman who lost her grandmother's locket. I cried for the person I had to become to survive my own family. The path forward wasn't clear. The idea of a happy family reunion, a tearful Thanksgiving dinner where we all hugged and made up, was a fantasy. The trust was not just broken, it was atomized. How could I ever sit at a table with people who had so willingly erased my existence for the sake of their own narrative? But holding the locket, I realized something. My fight with Liam wasn't just about stopping him. It was about claiming my own story. The book wasn't his to publish, but the history, the love, the connection to Nonna, that was still mine. He couldn't steal that. My parents' approval, or lack thereof, didn't change the truth of my work or the depth of my love for our grandmother. Slowly, tentatively, I started to work on the book again. Not for a publisher, not for fame, not for anyone but myself and for Nonna. I rewrote the introduction, this time telling the full story. Not of the family drama, but of my personal journey of rediscovery. I added the photo of me and Nonna, our hands covered in flour. I decided I would self-publish a small private run, just for the people who knew and loved her, for the cousins and relatives who understood, for Sophia, for myself. The title would no longer be a question of inheritance. It would be a simple, definitive statement. Nonna and me. It was my way of taking back the narrative, not with a lawsuit, but with truth. The ending wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was something quieter and more powerful. It was reclamation. The biggest lesson I learned from this whole ordeal is that keeping the peace is often just a code for letting them win. For years, I thought my silence was a form of strength, a dignified refusal to engage in their drama. I thought by being the quiet, reliable one, I was taking the high road. But the high road was just a scenic route to my own erasure. I was so busy keeping the peace for everyone else that I forgot to be peaceful with myself. I was swallowing injustice and calling it patience. True peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice. And sometimes you have to be the one to bring it. You have to be the one to set the fire, not because you want to watch the world burn, but because the rot has gone so deep that the only way to heal is to perform a controlled burn and start again from the ashes. I had to accept that the family I was fighting to be seen by was an illusion. I was mourning a fantasy, not a reality. The reality was that they were never going to see me, because their worldview was built around not seeing me. My value was tied to my utility for Liam. When I removed that utility, I became invisible, and then I became a threat. Another thing I realized is that you can't force people to see the truth. You can present them with a mountain of evidence, with facts, with receipts, with your own bleeding heart, and they will still choose the lie if the lie is more comfortable. My parents didn't want the truth. The truth implicated them. It meant admitting their failure, their favoritism, their role in creating the monster Liam had become, and the ghost I had been. the lie, that I was a jealous, vindictive daughter, was easier. It made them the victims of an unruly child, not the architects of a broken family. Accepting that was strangely liberating. I stopped trying to win them over and started focusing on validating myself. My relationship with my work has also changed. Before, the cookbook was a desperate plea for validation. See me. See my work. See what I can do. Now, it's just for me. The decision to self-publish a small run was about divorcing my creation from the need for external approval. Its worth isn't determined by a bestseller list or a morning talk show. Its worth is in the memory of my grandmother's hands, in the smell of garlic and olive oil, in the quiet joy of creating something true and beautiful. It's mine. That's enough. I learned that accountability is not the same as revenge. I never wanted to ruin Liam. I wanted him to stop. I wanted him to face the consequences of his actions, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I wanted to stop suffering myself. Setting a boundary is not an act of aggression. It's an act of self-preservation. It's saying, I love you, but I love me more, and I will not let you destroy me to save yourself. That is a terrifying and powerful lesson, and it has reshaped my entire world. I'm quieter now, but my silence is different. It's not the silence of fear. It's the silence of strength. So here I am now. It's been almost 2 years. I self-published 100 copies of Nonna and Me. I sent them to the few family members who had reached out with support, and to friends who had known me through this whole mess. Their response was small, but deeply meaningful. People sent me photos of themselves cooking the recipes, sharing their own memories of Nonna. The book became what it was always meant to be, a bridge, not a battleground. I don't speak to my parents or Liam. It's a clean break. The locket sits on my dresser. I don't wear it yet, but I look at it every day. It's a reminder of what was lost, but also of what was reclaimed. I'm still in therapy. I'm still healing. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes a smell or a song will trigger a memory, and the ache of that lost family feels fresh. But the feeling passes. It's a phantom limb, a pain from something that is no longer there. My life is smaller now, but it's also infinitely more authentic. My peace is hard-won. I protect it fiercely. I am learning to take up space, to trust my own voice, to believe that my work and my feelings are valid on their own, without anyone else's permission. And this brings me to you. I've shared this incredibly personal, painful story because I know I'm not the only one who has been the quiet one in a family. I'm not the only one who has been told to keep the peace at their own expense. So I have to ask, what would you have done? Was I right to burn it all down to save myself? Or is family always worth saving, no matter the cost? Is there a point where you have to choose yourself, even if it means losing everyone else? I've wrestled with these questions for years, and I still don't know if there's a right answer. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and perspectives mean a lot. Thank you for listening.